live far away. So, I promised. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah. Do you want one of us to record it so it's not looking up your nose?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
It should be fine.
Oh,
It's my best view.
nice.
So this is something I wrote back in February. I've been meaning to do it for months. I was going to do it at Boulder the other evening. That was my plan the whole time. But I've learned that things don't always go as we plan. And my suffering often comes from reality not matching what I want. And that's just the way it is. So, and this is probably a much better venue for this anyway, I think. Thank you for creating this space. I've been practicing this a lot. I usually stand along the Erie Canal way out in the country and I talk to the water. This is different. Today I forgot a lot of the words, so hopefully I'll be okay. All right? So, I remember being 5 years old and singing a song about an orange with a blue blemish that the other oranges would not play with. I remember drinking a pint of bourbon before school when I was 13 and being sent home at lunchtime. I remember being abused in so many ways throughout time. I remember asking why. Why is this world? I remember turning 18 and reaching out to the universe for the answer. I remember when I stopped reaching out and surrendered, I found it. I remember the music of the spheres, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees with every footstep upon this earth. I remember being in this body and walking with everything. I remember being nicknamed God and not having to pay the cover charge at house parties. I remember many people thinking me insane. I could not get them to taste my apple. I remember years later, after I had seen it all, I realized that I was ready to meet an other, if there is such a thing, an other to learn what it's like to be a human being with. I remember hearing your name for the first time before we had met and knowing it was you. I remember not going out to the local honky-tonk that night, the first night we would have met. I remember not wanting to drink and be that guy the first night meeting. Instead, staying on the land to plant broccoli under the full moon's light. I remember vibrating in this world like an alligator in the swamp seeking its mate as I mounded soil around the plantings. I remember the next day sitting around Hector Black's ever expandable Amish table with room always for everyone. I remember when you came into that room, I did not see you, but I could feel you, like one feeling warmth from a fire even when they're turned away. I remember you oh so near me, leaning past me for a napkin. I did not look at you, but remember the electricity in my every cell. I remember mulching garlic on the barefoot farmer's land as he told us the story of Rapunzel. I remember your face as we all sat in the back of his pickup truck after. I remember his cedar-lined shower and feeling the soil flow off of me. I remember eating the food he had grown with you across the candlelit table, beets and blueberry wine. I remember that Sandy Hepler, whom I barely knew at the time, had driven 850 miles round trip just to pick me up from Gesundheit Institute in West Virginia so that I could live on his land and write a book that explains what all of this is. I remember he died some years ago and that he's buried in his apple orchard wrapped only in all of his favorite t-shirts. I remember his land is now being taken care of by a nameless guy who is a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I remember Waffle House and hanging on your every word, what you said and how you said it, being amazed at you. I remember feeling free with you, able to just be me with you with nothing else. I remember my birthday in 2001. You gifted me with trinkets and that handmade card. We sat by a fire where I lived in the woods. You held me forever and wouldn't let go as you left, and then we had our very first kiss. I remember the sound of the waterfall near where I slept and the shadows of birds backlit by the moon. I remember you straddling me, fully clothed, as we each endlessly repeated the other one's name. I remember your eyes then. I remember the way you looked at me when we were standing in the kitchen of the barn. You were preparing to leave to return too far in the future. You looked at me and said, I have no doubts. I remember 4 years later, we got married at the spot where we first kissed. I remember you and I admiring that mature rattlesnake coiled in the road and the pickup truck that sped up to run it over. We both cried. I remember falling into the mundane world of work and money and jobs and stress and never seeing each other. I remember that I forgot to cherish you. I remember waking up one day to you telling me that we have nothing in common, that you feel no connection, and that only sometimes I make you laugh. I remember standing in our kitchen, the way you looked at me when you told me you no longer loved me, that your feelings had changed since I wasn't there when you needed me for the kids, that they are older now and you no longer need me. I remember you saying you'd been in touch with your ex for the past couple of months and that you loved him. I remember the whirlpool I fell into, full of grief and longing and confusion, not eating or sleeping at all for days, my mind trying to make sense of things with no resolution, and my heart so heavy, I wished for release from this world. I remember getting up one day at 4:30 in the morning, choosing not to lay in bed and swirl in thought, instead to rise and meet the day. I remember that I don't remember exactly when or where. I remembered that there is nothing real in this world except this moment. I remember feeling peace and wanting to release you from the burden of me while also wanting you to be my person. I remember that we are separated and living together, and that I still can't help but to love you when I see you. I remember that there is nothing separate from anything in this world based on everything I have ever known. I remember that love has no conditions. I remember telling you that I would wear my ring after our divorce. You'd already removed yours for months to remind me not to be so far away from myself and to not repeat my mistake. I remember saying I had been asleep and sleepwalking throughout life, but had recently reawoken, with you responding, that is good for you. I remember thinking that this would last forever, except that everything is impermanent and I can be wrong. I remember that I can see the moon and the stars if only I look. I remember that I should thank you for this upheaval, for bringing me back into myself. I did wish you had faith in this version of me. I remember that this is over and still I walk with everything. I remember that this is over and everything is fine because I remembered.